Hey everybody, Paul Abernathy here. Today we're going to be looking at some exam prep questions and dissecting them out. If you're in our FastTrax program, these questions may look familiar to you because they're a part of the package that's included in your FastTrax program. Now, when you're in our FastTrax program, these questions or the database is all the way at the bottom. So we put them there on purpose so that you have to go through the course material first before you get to the exam prep type questions, because we feel that when you start answering these questions, once you've started reading the material in the course and going through it, that it'll make more sense when you start answering these questions. But feel free, you can jump right down to it and do these questions anytime, over and over again, and you may see that you get better at them as you move through your FastTrax program. Okay? Also, by the way, these exam prep questions are also available for separate purchase for those that are interested in our question database over on fasttraxsystem.com. All right, so let's go on and get into some questions and kind of work on dissecting. And then I'll tell you some golden rules that I've been teaching for over 38 years when it comes to preparing for an exam with practice questions. Okay, there is a golden rule to that. So here's the question. First question we have. Now I'm going to remind you something. Don't be in a hurry. Too many people try to rush through their question database, and it really does you a disservice, because what you really need to do is look at this question and really dissect it down. This is going to get you more familiar with how to use the index, how to use the table of contents in the NEC, and it's going to give you a better understanding of terminologies. So don't be in a hurry. That's the first thing I tell you that people tell people is, oh, it's a 2-hour exam, then you need to do your database questions and you need to time yourself and do them like a 2-hour exam. That's not correct. Any educator that tells you that have not been teaching long enough. When you get down to 2 weeks before your exam, then you can start timing yourself using things like your timer on your phone. Just set it for 2 minutes, that type of thing. And do each question individually. Do not try to do it like all of them in a 2-hour period to replicate an exam. Don't do that. Okay? I want you to do each question individually and set the timer to 2 minutes and do it that way. That way you get to focus on the question and see how quickly did I answer it? Did I have any time remaining? Or did I go over the 2 minutes? That means I need to do a little bit more work on that question, dissecting it and getting better at it. Okay? So don't get discouraged. All right? Now, when you're in the program itself or you're studying and you're not really 2 weeks out, you're like a month out, 2 months out, you're going through these and you're doing some of these questions, take your time. Seriously, don't be in a hurry. So for example, in this question right here, you'll be using the table of contents, and you'll also be using the index and getting familiar and looking up certain words, certain phrases in the index and in the table of contents. All this is going to do is help broaden you and give you a better understanding of how the code is maneuvered. So this question says a legally required standby system. All right. Now, you all know or should know that there are 3 different types of standby systems that's covered in the National Electrical Code. And what we're talking about is emergency systems, legally required standby, and then the optional. Optional is like what you'd have at your residence, okay? There's not a specific time factor for when the power is lost and when that comes on. Many people refer to that as an emergency, but it's not. If it's for a residence, it's not an emergency. Now, in emergency systems in Article 700, the optional standby is in 702. But in the legally required, that is 701 that's required and has all the requirements. And this is a general requirement. Okay? This is talking about, hey, if you lose power and your AHJ determines that this is required to have a legally required by their ordinance or something from the state, and it's not clearly emergency, but it is legally required, then it has to come on within a certain amount of time, right? And so what we're looking for is the amount of time. And so this is basically a general requirement for the legally required standby system. So one of the things that you're going to do as you're dissecting a question is take it in pieces. So legally required standby system, you're going to look in the index under legally required standby systems. You might even look under standby systems. You want to exhaust all possible terms out of the question right now while you're studying. Not when you're in the exam room, right? But right now, take your time. Now, I also want to look under, again, standby power, power failure, all these type of things. You want to take some time and look in the index, okay? Now, if you look in the index, you're going to see that there is a statement for legally required standby power, okay? And so we're going to go look at the National Electrical Code, and you're going to see that that is in Chapter 7, because Chapter 7 is special conditions, okay? So let's go look at it. So here we are, Chapter 7, special conditions, and you see there is the emergency systems, 700. The Article 701 is the legally required. That's where we're going to be. And then you have the optional. So those are your three different types of standby systems, okay? So in your legally required, we know that what we're talking about is a general requirement. It's about the time factor, okay? Now, if you don't know that, I'm going to tell you something that's really important here. When you know that an article is very small, and you just do this by getting used to it, like Article 320 is small, 330 for MC cable is small. It's not as expansive like 430 for motors, okay? But the 430 has its own little pictograph right in the beginning of 430 to help you maneuver yourself. Well, when you have these smaller articles, it's not necessary. So, for example, I could go hunting in the index for all kinds of little things, or if I already know that I'm in Article 701 and I know that that is a very small article because I've been studying, then I'm going to go straight to 701. Now, I'm going to show you what we do with bold scanning. Bold scanning is very powerful. It's nothing new. It just means that you took what's in the question and it's asking you about the time factor, okay? The time, okay? In our case, we want to know whether it was what? If we looked back at the question was 10 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, or 120 seconds before this legally required has to kick in, whether generator has to start for these legally required loads, all right? So when we're looking at that, we go, okay, we're at bold scanning. So we're looking at the scope. We know it has nothing to do. We don't see anything in there about seconds, 10, 60, 120. We don't see anything in that. Recondition has nothing in commissioning. You see there's nothing in here. Quickly bold scanning. See anything in here about that. Load management, nothing in there. Operation, transfer equipment, nothing in there about a time factor. This is bold scanning. I'm looking at it very quickly as I'm going through. Ground fault, nothing of that is germane. The signs, not even relevant. The wiring, again, it's not part of the question. And we're going down. Okay, sources of power, general requirements, okay? Now, when we say sources of power, this is what happens when we lose one source of power and then the other source of power has to kick in. That's kind of what our question's about. So if you look down here, all of a sudden I see seconds, 60 seconds. That was one of our answers. So again, one of the tips so when you're reading a question is remember, sometimes the answers may be beneficial to help you answering the question. So you have to get used to working that's called short-term memory. And remember, we're looking for legally required. We're looking for 60 seconds, 120 seconds, 90 seconds. We're looking for all of that. And here you see legally required standby power will be available within the time required for the application, but not to exceed 60 seconds. So could it come on quicker than 60? Absolutely. But it can exceed 60 seconds for that transfer, okay, to this other power source, say a generator, okay? So 60 seconds is going to be our answer. So we get back to the question, and obviously 60 seconds. Now, let's just say I answer it wrong. I'm going to go choose 10. We know 10's not right. All right, 10, by the way, would be for emergency, okay? And you find it the same way if it was question was about emergency, but this one was legally required. Try to refrain from going down here and clicking the reference. If you get it wrong, take the time now to go back and search for it. Don't be in such a freaking hurry, folks. This is what I see majority of instructors telling people wrong. Look, I've been doing this for 38 years. I would not steer you wrong, okay? I have done this tried and tested. I've worked with thousands of students through the years. I've written exam prep for many, many test agencies. Look, I'm telling you this because it's important. Don't just skip to the reference. You paid good money for our courses, whether you got the database or you're in our FastTrax program. Take your time. Hey, even if you're not in our program, you paid good money for your questions. Don't be in a hurry. take your time. Okay, what's the rush? You're trying to learn these things right now. Okay, so in this case, go back and look it up. And then if you come back and you get the right answer, we'll click 60. You see that it goes green. Then you can check your work by clicking reference. And there you will see 701.12. So don't be in a hurry. Pace yourself out. Again, try to literally break this question down as many ways as possible. Look up everything that stands out, any trigger word, by going to the index. And you might say, Paul, that just takes time. But that's what a structured program is about, because you know what? At the end of the day, it's not just about passing the exam. It's about getting better at maneuvering the NEC. This is why in our program, we have those little chevrons that'll move you in and out of the course. It's done that way on purpose, folks. All right, let's go to another question. All right, next. The bending radius for the inner edge of AC cable shall not be less than blank times the diameter of the cable. All right, so this is an easy one for us to dissect. We know we're talking about AC cable, and if you're in our FastTrax program, you already know that AC cable is Article 320. And you also know that it's not very big, a couple pages. So bold scanning is going to be the best way to get you there right away. Now, on an exam, this is an example of a question where you may know the answer right away because you've been studying, you know it. So you've heard me talk about the three-wave method. This is a perfect example. If I know the answer right away, without a doubt, I'd mark the answer and I move on to the next question. Okay, and so if you typically break down your exam, you're going to have about 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes per question, depending on the state you're in and the number of questions. When you answer a question that you just flat out know right away, guess what you've done? You've given yourself more time for the next question that may be a little tougher than this one. And so as you go through the program, you build up a bank of time for those tougher questions. Okay, so that's the whole process that we talk about, the three-wave method. I won't go into that here, but there is a video available that you can search for, the three-wave method, on YouTube, as well as over on FastTrax Tube, and they'll explain you the process of how you should take an exam. And that's going to really help you. So I encourage you to go watch that video. All right, so in this case here, I can go to the table, the index, and look for armored cable. That's what AC stands for. And look it up, and I'm sure underneath it'll have something to do with bending radius or bending. But in our case, we know that it is Article 320. And oh, by the way, you should be creating yourself some flashcards. Now, our program has flashcards built into it down in the database, but I encourage you to create your own flashcards, whether you use something like sticky notes and you put the article on one side and the answer on the other, and just flip through sticky notes, or get you some index cards, or you can use our electronic ones. Totally up to you. But you want to get used to just rattling off the articles, right? 330 MC cable, 320 AC cable, 430 motors, okay? 334 non-metallic sheet cable, 336 tray cable, 338 SE cable, right? You just want to get used to rattling it off, because that not only will help you in the field, but it's also going to help you when you're preparing for an exam. When I see something like AC cable, I know 320, and I'm going to use bold scan. So let's do that right now. All right, so I'm going to the NEC, and I'm going to go to 320. And as you can see, 320 is armored cable. And I'm going to bold scan. And what am I looking for? Bending radius. Bending, something that tells me 5 times, 10 times. I'm looking for values. So I'm remembering the answers, and I'm using the question. And so I'm looking at that has nothing to do with bending, nothing to do with bending, nothing to do with bending. This is bold scanning. Really quickly, you're just looking at it, and you've got in your mind values, the word bending, the word radius, all that kind of stuff. I'm looking here, don't see anything, boom, bending radius, ding, 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 ding. Took us what, a couple seconds? Here, and immediately I see 5 times, okay? Inner edge. Those are all things from the question that you should be scanning for. And trust me, this takes a little practice, but once you get it, you'll get it. And you'll forever remember that, even when you're in the field and you go back to our course, because remember, our course never expires. You'll be able to refresh your memory at any time in our program and say, okay, well, it's 5 times. All right. So, we'll go back to the question, and easy peasy, 5 times. You can check yourself. We know it's right. We can check yourself by getting the reference, 320.24. Okay? Again, if you do not get it right, don't immediately go to the reference. Go back and find out why you got it wrong. Remember, this is totally different than what you do in the last 2 weeks before an exam where you're going to time yourself with a 2-minute timer on your phone. Here, if you get it wrong, but you think you know the answer and you just checked it like we talked about and you got it wrong, pump the brakes. Okay? Don't immediately go to the reference. You need to spend whatever time it takes to look up the words, look up bending radius, look up AC cable. Okay? Do whatever you can to forage through the index because we want you to get much better at the index. Okay? Just saying, it's going to help you in the long run. Okay, so in this case, we know it's 5. We've checked our code reference, so we're going to move on. Okay, so this next question, on an exam, this could fall under what we call theory. You're saying, well, this is not in the National Electrical Code. I don't get it. Why in the world would I be getting a question like this? Well, different parts of the state, they might ask you electrical theory questions, and you need to understand Ohm's law, and you need to understand Watt's law. Hopefully, you've learned this prior to taking our course. And you've learned this as part of your hands-on, your hours that you needed, because we focus on the NEC. But if you're a FastTrax Enhanced member, then you get access to FastTrax Tube, and we have some great voltage drop. We have some great Ohm's Law, Watt's Law videos as well there that you have full access to if you're an enhanced member. And if you're not, you're a basic member and you want access to those videos, all you got to do is go to FastTraxTube.com and you can subscribe over there and get access to hundreds of videos on all types of electrical code related stuff. All right, and we're always adding more. All right, so let's look at this question real quick. Okay, the one thing we notice it's missing. Well, we have the ohms, we have the amps, but we have no idea what the voltage is. So in order to solve this and find out what the power is, we have to use what? The E over I times R, or we have to use the pi, P over I times R, P over I times E, and figure out what's the missing component here. Well, I have no idea what the voltage is. In order to be able to solve this, I need to know what that voltage is. Okay, so I got my trusty calculator. So the first thing is I want to search for whatever the voltage is. All right, so we know that to find the voltage, then we need to go I times R. So it's current, so 30 times R is 0.5, and that is 15. So now we know the voltage is 15. Now we can shift to the pie chart. That's the P over I times E. E being the voltage, I being the current, amps, and P being the wattage. We're solving for wattage, so we're going to put our thumb over the P. So what does that leave us? I times E. So now that we know that E is 15, we're going to go I, which is 30, times 15, and that is 450. Okay? Now, right here, boom, 450, and that is an electrical theory type question. Now, here's the beautiful thing about our course. You ready? You might be saying, Paul, I get it, but it didn't show me the math. Well, guess what? In your program, you have what's called FastTrax Interact. Okay? What I recommend you do is go in there, you would just left click, drag over this, right click, and copy it. And then go into your course, click on the FastTrax Interact, and post it in the chat, and somebody will break it down for you how I just did it. Okay, that's the powerful thing about the Interact feature, all right, is that you just go into your course and you can post it in there, okay? So an example of that would be, let's see if I can share this screen with you. Let me go to this screen real quick. All right, see, here's where we're at. Now see this FastTrax Interact down here, this little thing. I could click this and I could actually right click and paste that question right there, okay? And if you click the little yellow button, boom, it throws it right into the chat. And then somebody will come along and answer it for you, right? Or we will answer it for you. So that's the beautiful thing about FastTrax Interact. And it is something that is totally new to our program, okay? Totally new to our program. Okay, so let's go on real quick and let me get you back to where we're at here. Okay, so that's our question. So this is an example of a theory question. And you're going to get these on your exams. But just remember, this is a two-step process. I had to determine what the voltage was in order to be able to solve for what the wattage is. Okay. Next one here, it says blank cable is permitted to be installed as direct burial without any other protection. So this means you have the ability to drop it straight into the earth. Now remember, you have depth of cover that's in 300.5 of the National Electrical Code. So you do have this depth of cover requirement. But what type of product can be dropped straight into the earth? Now you might already know the answer to this. And again, this would be a good example where you can answer it and move on. Okay. Now, when I look at this, I know that NM is non-metallic sheath cable. Now, might be just your knowledge. You should by now, if you're in our program, you know that that is for a dry location application. It's not rated for direct burial. It can't be in a wet location. Okay, so it's in a wall, it's in construction, it's a conditioned space, okay, or in a space of the dwelling itself or the building. So that's NM. So it's not listed for that. Now you could go to Article 334 and we could look under uses not permitted, which is dot 12, and you'll see that it's not permitted. Skipping UF, going down to SE. Surface entrance is more like an SEU or an SER. That's above ground product. If you were to go look at Article 338, you'll see that the SE cable, it's not USE, it's SE cable, surface entrance cable, then that is an above ground only product. Where would you go look for that? Well, you're going to go to Article 338. It's a very short article. You'll see that. Now, of course, THHN is designed to be installed in raceways. You all know this, so you should know this. This is why we look at these things. And you say, well, no, THHN is not designed to be direct buried in the earth. So again, would not be one to choice here. But UF is underground feeder and branch circuit applications. It's just UF. It doesn't say underground branch and feeder. It does when you look at 340, which is the article, but here it's just called UF. And so you're saying, okay, where do we verify that? Okay, so real quickly, I will take you through each one of these and show you where they're not permitted. Okay, so let's go first. I'll take you to the NEC. All right, so let's do the first one. So let's look at non-metallic really quickly. If you didn't already know this, and you go down here to uses not permitted. Okay, so we're talking about NM cable. All right, so here's NM right here. And it says it's not permitted where? It's not permitted in wet and damp locations. Direct burial outside is a wet location. So boom, that eliminates that application, right? Okay, so that's the first one, all right? Now, the next one we were looking at is SE. So let's go to 338, and we'll go to the listing, and we'll look at uses not permitted again for SE cable right here. Okay, where is it not? It's not permitted underground with or without a raceway. So even if you take SE cable like an SEU or an SER, you can't sleeve it in a raceway and put it underground. Not permitted for that application. Remember, we're not talking about USE. Okay, we're talking about SE. That was the question. Okay, so that's that one. So the last one we were looking at here was THHN. All right, well, let's look at THHN. And in order to find that, you're going to go to 310 conductors, right? And we're going to go down and we're going to look at one thing. You go is 310.4. That's the first thing. And we're going to look for THHN. Here's THHN right here. Okay, and it says dry and damp locations. Okay, well, outdoors underground is a wet location. So THHN would not be permitted there. And if you're saying, Paul, I don't trust you, well, then you can go to 300 down here. And we can go down here and let's see here. Let's look at real quickly. Hold on here. No, that's not where I want to go. Hold on here. Let's see. Hold on here. Here you go. Raceways. Okay. Well, 300.5 first. Let's look at 300.5. Wet location. Interior of enclosures or raceways installed underground shall be considered a wet location. Okay. Right? So we also know that THHN, THWN-2 has to be installed in raceways. Okay. Now, look at here. Raceways in wet locations, even above grade, is considered a wet location. Okay, so THHN is, you already saw it, it's not rated for a wet location. So we're just looking at all these applications, right? And let's look back at the conductors, okay? It says single conductors, THHN is one. says single conductor specified in 310.41, which is that list we saw where we saw THHN. It says shall only be permitted where installed as part of a recognized wiring method as specified in Chapter 3. Well, individual conductors aren't in Chapter 3. That's where MC cable is, AC cable, rigid, intermediate, EMTA. So that's another example that THHN cannot be dumped directly into the earth. Well, you're saying, well, what about USC-2? Isn't that an individual conductor? Yes, but it's covered under Article 338, and that is specific for USE, and it says that it's rated for direct burial if it has that marking on it. You get me? All right, so lastly is the one that was in question, and that was 340, and that was the UF. So I'll show you right here. Now you notice it says underground feeder and branch circuit, although the acronym is just UF, okay? And you look down here, use is permitted, and it says UF cables shall be permitted for underground, including direct burial in the earth. So that is why. Now, you might be thinking, Paul, I don't have time to go through all that. No, you don't. That's the difference between a structured program. You wouldn't have had to do this if you really studied in a program that breaks these things down for you. So if you take an exam and you run out of time, you're like, shit, I don't have any time left. I still have questions to answer. You didn't get the right program. You bought a program from somebody, maybe off Amazon. It's cheap, 60, 70, 80 bucks with questions, and you think that's going to help you learn. That is not how you truly learn the NEC. Now, if you just want to get your license and you don't care that once you get out in the field, you don't really learn anything, that's you. But for me, I have this complex where I have to feel like we teach somebody. And that's what our programs do. They teach you. You would have known this question right away when you got to it, that it would have been UF right there. And there's your reference, 340.10.1, okay? All right, last question we'll do on this series here is fixture wires shall not be smaller than, all right? So let's see here if I can, I'm gonna pull up the code for you. And let's see here. Yeah, let me pull up the code for you and say, okay, first thing, we'll get the code ready. All right, so the first thing when I look at a question like this, you're saying, okay, where do I dissect this? Well, you can go in the back and look under fixture wires, okay? And since you are talking about a conductor size, and it's saying that the fixture wires shall not be smaller than, so these are the wires that are integral to a fixture or a luminaire. It might be what's in the swag kit that comes down. Those smaller conductors, you'll learn really quickly if you get used to doing flashcards that you have 400, Article 400 is flexible cords and cables, but 402 is fixture wire. So let's go look at the NEC. And we're going to go down just so you can see the broader scope of what we're looking at. So here we're at 400, and see here, Article 400 is flexible cords and flexible cables. And then you see that 402 is entitled fixture wire. So you're forever going to remember that now. Forever. You're going to say, hey, I get it. Anytime I have a fixture wire question, for it. Now you can look in the index, and under fixture wire, you're probably going to have a lot of subdivisions for it, and you can go right there. But I can promise you fixture wire is not a big article. So why not do a bold scan? Hit it. So what are we asking? We're looking for conductor sizes. All right, so boom, right away, bold scan, scope. That has nothing to do with conductor sizes, different types. All right, these are the types, okay? No, we're not there. Ampacities of fixture wire, okay? If you remember the question was basically asking us about the minimum size, right? So it wasn't about the ampacity. So you're like, okay, good try. And boom, minimum size right here. Fixture wire should not be smaller than 18 gauge. Bam, it took us all of a few seconds because I knew that fixture wire is a small article. You could have gone to the index. You could have spent some extra time there. This is why I tell you the difference between a structured program like ours is you learn the size of the articles. It just happens. This is why in our program we send you back and forth into the NEC, okay? All right, so we'll come back to the question. Obviously, it's 18 gauge, and there's your code reference, 402.6. Okay, hopefully all of this makes sense in a program like ours. It's to help you learn. We hope you got something out of this episode. If you're interested in our program, the information is down in the information below. We hope to see you in another upcoming video.